8. Backyard pool gator. In March 2023, a family living in Florida was shocked to find an 11-foot, 3.4-meter alligator swimming around in their backyard pool. The gator had somehow managed to break through the fence surrounding the family's home. Kinda like the Kool-Aid Man, according to Volusia County resident and owner of the invaded pool, Lynn Tosi. The incident was picked up by local news station WFTV Channel 9, which also reported on several other stories involving gators in the county less than a week earlier. Alligators aren't uncommon in the Sunshine State, but finding one splashing around in someone's pool is highly irregular. Imagine if you were planning to take a dip in your swimming pool and were met by a massive gator. Having an experience like that might make you rethink swimming altogether. Tosi told reporters that most Florida residents try and play it safe around ponds and lakes. But she said that after what happened, she thinks that all homeowners should double-check their own pools for gators before getting in. It's not exactly clear what happened to the alligator, but animal control was likely called in to help handle the situation. At the time this story was reported, there had been 3 other reports of alligators in Volusia County over a 5-day period. Daytona Beach resident Scott Hollingsworth was bitten by a gator when he stepped out of his front door. And another unnamed man from Deltona had to shoot an alligator that had attacked his dog. So, as you can see, this is a growing problem for people living in the Sunshine State. One that might get a lot worse before anything is done. 7. Hotel snake. In early January of 2023, a traveler on vacation in Thailand spotted a 12-foot, 4-meter snake wriggling around in her hotel's outdoor pool. A British TikToker and musician, who's known by her screen name Elizabeth Electra, was documenting her holiday in the Southeast Asian country when she discovered the massive serpent. In a 1-minute video taken by Electra that was posted to her TikTok page, the giant snake can be seen swimming in the water of the neon-lit swimming pool. It's scary enough to be in a country you're not familiar with, but to find out that your hotel is being shared by huge serpents is nothing short of a nightmare. Some of the world's largest and most venomous snakes can be found in Thailand, including the terrifying reticulated python, which can grow to be nearly 20 feet, 6 meters in length, and the king cobra, the world's longest venomous serpent. Reticulated pythons have the ability to swim and can sometimes be found out in the open ocean. Thailand's sea snakes are extremely venomous, although they don't typically attack humans. In the case of the snake found at the hotel, it was removed by members of the staff using pool cleaners. Elizabeth Electra reassured her viewers and explained that the snake was taken to safety. The hotel staff member who moved the animal even stroked the serpent's head, as if to calm the beast. And while it may be common for people living in Thailand to deal with these massive snakes, it will likely be a long time before anyone with ophidiophobia visits the country. 6. Hippomania. Hippos are giant, semi-aquatic mammals with short legs, barrel-shaped bodies, enormous heads, and tiny tails. They're considered to be the second largest animal on the planet and can weigh up to 7,000 pounds, 3,200 kilograms. These massive beasts are typically found in sub-Saharan Africa. Although, sadly, populations have declined in recent years due to hunting and habitat loss. These animals spend most of the day in lakes and rivers in order to beat the blistering African heat. But on New Year's Eve in 2019, one particularly sneaky hippo opted to cool off in a family swimming pool. 47-year-old Mauen, Botswana resident Brent Reed said that the giant male hippo was discovered in the garden of his home by a night watchman. Reed, who's a safari director, captured pictures of his 11-year-old son, Troy, and the young boy's friend, Kyle Stein, looking down at the giant wild animal in the pool. And according to Reed, the hippo seemed completely at ease with the family's presence. The hippo, one of the most dangerous animals in the world, seemed to be in no rush to exit the family's 6.5-foot deep swimming pool. Reed initially thought that the animal was stuck and couldn't get out on its own. But the beast eventually climbed out on January 1st after ringing in the new year with the family. The hippo likely took refuge in the backyard pool because the Thamalakane River had been dry for quite some time. And while nobody was hurt by the animal during this incident, it did leave behind a considerable mess in Reed's previously pristine pool. 5. Eight-legged nightmare. If you have arachnophobia, you may want to skip over this next story. Did you know that some spiders can survive underwater for up to 30 hours? Neither did we. But apparently, eastern mouse spiders have a tendency to fall into swimming pools. So they've learned to adapt in these situations. And in late March of 2023, an Australian woman found not one, not two, not even three, but 4 of these water-breathing spiders in her swimming pool. The unlucky individual who made this discovery was Linda Smith, who lives on the northern coast of New South Wales. After the area was hit with a heavy rainstorm, Linda went out to check on her outdoor pool, and to her surprise, she discovered 4 eastern mouse spiders creepily crawling around at the bottom of the pool. These arachnids are extremely horrifying to look at for those afraid of spiders, and they vary in size from 10 millimeters to 35 millimeters in length. They have black, bulbous bodies and jaws, and their carapace is shiny and smooth. They're also highly venomous and just as dangerous as funnel web spiders, which they're often mistaken for. People who are bitten by eastern mouse spiders display a variety of symptoms, including numbness, tingling around the bite site, general nausea, sweating, and headaches. But luckily, it's not common for one of these arachnids to bite humans. According to Linda Smith, this wasn't even the first run-in that she'd had with these spiders. In an interview with 7news.com.au, she said that the heavy rain must have attracted the arachnids because, before that, she hadn't seen one in a while. But like we said previously, these spiders tend to fall into swimming pools, and 4 of them just so happened to slip into Linda's. This usually happens when male eastern mouse spiders go looking for a mate, which they typically do after heavy rainfall. Linda ended up scooping the venomous spiders out of her pool with a net, making sure to keep the creepy crawlers at a safe distance. Luckily, she wasn't bitten, but she'll likely be checking her swimming pool for months to come before taking a swim. 4. Family of bears. In Southern California, a terrified couple watched from a safe distance as a family of bears waltzed into their backyard and took a dip in their swimming pool. This happened in August of 2021 in the city of Sierra Madre. In a video of the incident that was shared by Tiffany Kress, the bears can be seen creeping towards the wall of Tiffany and her husband Kevin's backyard. When the couple initially noticed that the wild animals were on the wall, Tiffany can be heard in the video saying, "Go inside," repeatedly. They then grabbed their dog and retreated into their house, making sure to lock their sliding glass doors behind them. From the safety of their home, the couple continued to watch as 2 young bear cubs entered their backyard pool, all while commenting on the cubs' swimming technique. Tiffany and Kevin weren't concerned in the slightest during the encounter. In fact, they seemed to enjoy having the bear family in their backyard. Tiffany told local station KTVU that, "We keep the motto of, love them but keep them wild." She then went on to say that it takes a lot of fear and concern away when you take the necessary precautions to live well with nature. She explained that they never entice them or feed the wild animals, but instead choose to respect them and allow them to have their own space. After a few minutes, the video showed the mama bear looking for her young cubs. Then the animal climbs down the wall and joins her babies in the pool. The whole encounter only lasted around 15 minutes, as the bears didn't opt to stick around for very long. But according to Tiffany, the animals came back just an hour later, and they showed up 4 more times over the following week. Tiffany and Kevin Kress were smart enough not to engage with the wild beasts, but instead watched from afar and kept a safe distance. It may be wise that if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, you learn from this story and don't poke the bears. 3. Shark in the water. There aren't a lot of people out there that would be okay with sharing a pool with a shark, and rightfully so. And they're one of the most terrifying creatures in the ocean. Apparently, though, some people don't get a choice in whether or not they want to swim with a shark. In March of 2017, swimmers were surprised to find a shark lurking in the water of a beachside pool in Australia. The animal was identified as a dusky whaler shark, which, when fully grown, can measure between 10 and 14 feet, 3 to 4.3 meters in length. But thankfully, in this case, the shark was a juvenile and was only a measly 3 feet, 1 meter long. And while it was likely a shock to find the animal in the pool, the shark seemed a lot more scared of the swimmers than they were of it. Somehow, the little shark had managed to hide from everyone, and it was only spotted after Jennifer Hill, a local woman, had already done several laps in the swimming pool. After being alerted of the situation, Carrie McDonald from Manly Sea Life Sanctuary arrived at the scene to rescue the shark. Using nets, the animal was easily captured, and afterward, it was transported to safety. McDonald told the BBC that the small shark wouldn't have been a threat. However, she went on to explain that once dusky whaler sharks are fully grown, they're strong, capable predators. Nobody really knows how the shark ended up in the beachside pool, but locals suspect that it may have been washed in by a particularly high tide. In the end, the situation was handled without any incidents or injuries. But imagine what might have happened if instead of a juvenile, a fully grown shark had found its way into the pool. 2. Scorpion sting. In the first case we've mentioned today where anyone was hurt, a 5-year-old girl was stung by a scorpion in her family's pool in Las Vegas in May of 2023. Nevada resident Kim Kimalevsky was absolutely shocked to find out that scorpions can survive in water. According to news outlet KLAS, she found this out under horrifying circumstances when her young daughter, Kate, was stung by one of these creatures while playing in their backyard pool. The suspect in question was a bark scorpion, a bizarre animal that's typically beige in color and has the usual scorpion characteristics, including a venomous stinger. Bark scorpions are unique, though, because they glow under ultraviolet light. They're also among the most venomous scorpions in the US. In Kate's case, the animal that stung her was only about an inch, 2.54 centimeters long. But these scorpions can grow to be 3 inches, 8 centimeters, or longer under the right conditions. After realizing that her daughter had been stung, Kim rushed the 5-year-old to the hospital, where the girl was given Benadryl before being sent home. Doctors warned Kim to watch Kate closely, though, and they described what symptoms to look out for. Everything seemed fine for the first hour, but then Kate started to twitch. These involuntary movements then transformed into full body spasms, prompting Kim to call 911 and subsequently take her daughter back to the hospital. Upon arriving at the medical facility, Kate was given 3 full doses of anti-venom. The girl then spent the entire night and most of Mother's Day in a hospital bed while recovering from the scorpion sting. Luckily, though, Kate went on to make a full recovery, and she hasn't been afraid to get back in the pool either. Kim, however, is now taking every precaution she can to avoid another similar incident. She's resorted to spraying her yard for scorpions, and she now checks her pool every time before allowing anyone to take a dip in the water. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear even more stories, stay tuned for some extra content that you might have missed. 1. Beat the heat. In December 2019, a kangaroo was seen cooling off in a pool in Australia. The animal was spotted in a bushfire-ravaged section of the country, while firefighters have been rescuing koalas from burning trees elsewhere. Over the years, the wildlife in Australia has been hit hard by fires that have completely destroyed over 9.1 million acres, 3.7 hectares of bushland. And while kangaroos aren't really known for their swimming skills, they do look for bodies of water during periods of intense heat, although they typically do this in the wild. The kangaroo seen cooling off in a pool was captured on video by a family from New South Wales. The animal had wandered into the family's backyard and decided to take a dip. This came as no surprise, since at the time, temperatures were reaching triple digits, around 107 degrees Fahrenheit, 42 degrees Celsius. In the video, the kangaroo can be seen lounging in chest-deep water, flapping its ears frivolously. The animal also appears to be unbothered by the presence of the family, who seemed to be rather close to the kangaroo while recording. This sweet moment, which was likely highly enjoyable for the kangaroo, is now immortalized online, proving that even wild animals like to beat the heat by taking a dip in a swimming pool.
10. Snake in the truck. It was late in the afternoon on Friday when Eduardo Jacinto, a 38-year-old rancher, called an employee of his to ask if he could take care of some cattle on the family property. This is just off a rural highway in Brazil. Unfortunately for the employee, he had a deadly encounter with a serpent while on his way. The employee spotted the snake on the side of the road and slowed down to get a good look at it. He was pretty sure this was the same giant snake he had seen in recent years around the area. But the serpent had gotten bigger since the last time he saw it. This time the snake was an estimated 21 feet, 6.4 meters in length. It was a literal monster. As the employee was driving, he had his wife following behind him. They had both slowed to check out the huge snake, and his wife had pulled out her camera. As she was taking pictures of the enormous serpent, she noticed it looked ready to strike. She also noticed that her husband had his arm leaning out of the window. She yelled at him to bring his arm inside, and it was just then that the serpent lunged at the truck. If not for her warning, the huge snake, which looked to be an anaconda, may very well have sunk its fangs into the guy's arm. It might even have dragged him out of the truck. They took off after that, and so far as we know, the mysterious giant snake has not been seen again. 9. Drunk revenge. A man in India named Rama Mato was recently killed after a failed revenge attack on a baby snake. Yes, this bizarre incident is exactly as strange as it sounds. Rama was relaxing outside his home in the small village of Madhode when the baby snake slithered up and sunk its fangs into his leg. It was too late to do anything about the bite, but not too late for a bit of revenge. Rama grabbed the snake by its neck, brought it up to his face, and tried to bite the snake in half. But this proved to be the worst possible reaction because Rama died just hours later. According to Rama's family members who witnessed the ridiculous scene play out, he was bitten over 10 times on the face while trying to chew apart the baby reptile. He may have survived if not for his illogical idea to bite the snake in half, starting at its middle. While he tried to chew through its tough skin, the snake just kept biting him in the face. And to make matters worse, he refused the family's advice to go to the hospital. He was drunk at the time and said the snake had no venom because it was just a baby. Intoxicated and frustrated, Rama passed out. The next morning, his family found him dead in his bed, undoubtedly from the untreated snake bites. 8. Dog Savior. In Alabama, a dog named Ruger became a local hero after saving his owner from a deadly copperhead snake. The owner of the dog is Zachary Pate, a resident of Tuscaloosa. He was on an ordinary afternoon walk around his favorite lake with Ruger when suddenly the dog began nipping at his leg. Zachary was confused because his 18-month Con Corso had never tried to play with him like that. The dog became wildly aggressive, biting his leg and scratching its claws. Zachary was so weirded out that he actually turned around and scolded the dog, getting mad for the bizarre behavior. Then Ruger started running around in wild circles. That was when Zachary realized the dog had something in its mouth. It looked like a stick, but it was a little too limp. Upon closer inspection, he realized that Ruger had snatched a copperhead snake in its jaws. He then watched the dog thrash the snake against a log, whipping the serpent with all its might. The whole ordeal was over in just seconds, and Ruger left the snake limp in the dirt. Zachary, to make sure the snake was really dead, picked up a stick and bludgeoned the serpent with it. But perhaps the most amazing part, other than the heroics of the dog, is that nobody got hurt. Ruger didn't get bit, and neither did Zachary, which is good news, seeing as how toxic the venom of the copperhead is. If Zachary had been bit, he would have needed to make it all the way back to his truck and then drive to the nearest hospital. But by then, it may have been too late. 7. Hiding under the bed. A young girl in Australia was hospitalized just a few Mondays ago after a snake snuck up on her while sleeping and tried to kill her. The girl was just 10 years old, sound asleep in her bed, when a sudden pain woke her up. Something had bitten her feet, several times actually. She screamed. Her family ran into the room, and when they saw the mulga snake slithering around the floor, They hurriedly got the child out of the room and rushed her to the hospital. The mulga snake, also sometimes known as the king brown snake, is extremely venomous. According to local snake catcher Rex Neindorf, who was called in to deal with a horrifying reptile, mulga snakes are known for being ridiculously aggressive. They also have a savage bite and won't hesitate to lash out when under stress. Toxic venom is injected via the fangs, so potent it's almost always lethal. And to make the snake even scarier, it's been known to grow up to 9 feet, 2.7 meters long. Luckily, the girl's family knew what they were doing. They got her to the closest hospital and admitted her to the ICU. She was given an anti-venom by the doctors and has since made a full recovery. She'll be okay, though probably a little traumatized. As for the slippery serpent, it was disposed of by the snake catcher. What would you do if you found a venomous snake hiding in your bed in the middle of the night? Let us know in the comments and remember to subscribe before the end of the video. 6. Attack in the dark. A man from New Jersey was recently recovering in the hospital after an unexpected snake bite while hiking on a trail after dark. According to Kevin Murray, he was on a short hike just after sunset when he felt a sharp, stinging sensation on his ankle. A few feet away from him, he noticed something that would have caused a normal person's heart to explode. There was a huge brown snake making a sneaky getaway, what turned out to be a copperhead. But for Kevin, he didn't think anything of it. After all, this is New Jersey. Kevin just thought it was a garden snake and wouldn't be an issue. But just in case, he snapped a picture of it. The picture ended up being hugely important. Doctors were able to use the photo to identify the snake when Kevin was rushed to the ICU following a sudden onset of snake bite symptoms. He was in tremendous pain, and doctors were worried that the venom was quickly spreading to his heart. Luckily, that wasn't the case. He didn't even require anti-venom, though he did stay in the hospital for 3 days under observation. Kevin's doctor said it was his ability to stay calm that helped save his life. They said most people freak out after being bit, which causes the venom to run through their body much quicker as the heart speeds up. Kevin's relaxation after realizing he was bitten by a deadly serpent is what ultimately kept the venom from leaking into his heart. 5. Bitten on the toilet. In Australia, a man was bitten by his neighbor's python. While this in itself isn't much of a story, the fact that the python bit the guy while he was sitting on the toilet makes it something a little unusual. The bizarre event happened early in the morning when the guy sat down to do his business. What he didn't know is that the snake had previously escaped from his neighbor's apartment, slithered through the drainage system, and came out in his toilet. The victim, 65 years old, felt a sudden pinch in his private area. When he looked between his legs, he saw a massive albino python staring back at him. Naturally, he hopped off the toilet and ran away, then called a reptile expert to come deal with the monster. The reptile expert got the snake out of the toilet, gave it a quick clean, and then handed it back to its owner. And yeah, the owner is a bit of an odd duck. According to the police, they discovered him to be keeping 11 constrictor snakes in his apartment, with some living in terrariums and some living in drawers. They've since launched an investigation and hope to bring up charges of causing bodily harm because of negligence. As for the old fella's private area, he had himself checked at the hospital and has since recovered. 4. Pet mamba. Ask your friends, they'll probably all tell you it's a bad idea to have a venomous snake for a pet. A man in North Carolina clearly didn't ask his friends for advice before he purchased himself a pet green mamba, one of the deadliest snakes in the entire world. It's not quite as bad as the black mamba from Africa, but the chances of surviving a bite without immediate anti-venom are extremely low. The North Carolinian, whose name has been kept out of the news, had to take himself directly to the hospital after a bit of an altercation with his exotic pet. The snake bit him on the hand, injecting neurotoxin venom. He needed the antidote immediately, but when he arrived at the hospital, they told him that the nearest available anti-venom for such a creature was over 250 miles, 402 kilometers away at a zoo in Colombia. The only reason the Riverbanks Zoo had the anti-venom is because they have 3 green mambas on display in their collection. Staff at the zoo had to quickly pack a cooler with 10 vials of the anti-venom, then drive it to the Lexington Medical Center, where it was flown to the UNC Rex Hospital where the victim was slowly dying. But they did get the anti-venom to him eventually. And just in time, too, because he almost kicked the bucket. He recovered over the weekend and was sent home. And amazingly, he still has the deadly snake living in his house. 3. Hero Cat. In Australia, a heroic cat has sacrificed itself to save 2 young children. This amazing act of courage happened while the domestic cat, whose name was Arthur, was playing with his owners in their backyard, where they live on Australia's Sunshine Coast. The humans didn't notice the big, mean, and very venomous eastern brown snake slither into the garden, but the cat did. The feline got into a standoff with a serpent, giving the parents enough time to get their children to safety. But before the cat could also make its retreat, the snake lashed out with its fangs. It then slithered back out of the garden the way it came, as if it had come on purpose just to bite the cat and then leave. The cat was in a phenomenal amount of pain, and the family quickly took him to the nearest veterinarian. But unfortunately, the vets at the animal emergency room couldn't do anything to save him. Arthur's symptoms were too severe, with the deadly venom coursing through his veins. The family had no choice but to quickly put the cat to sleep, saving him from any more pain. They left the veterinarian's office with heavy hearts, but will always remember the brave cat for saving the lives of their 2 young children. 2. Steaks on the grill. Speaking of children and snakes, 2 kids were recently a whole lot less lucky than the ones in the last story. In Arizona, a family was on vacation at Riggs Lake when they had a dangerous encounter with a rattlesnake. The 2 children, ages 4 and 8, were playing no less than 15 feet, 4.5 meters away from their father, who was cooking up a few steaks on the grill. In this case, it was actually the children who antagonized the snake. The issue here is that the kids were used to being around snakes. The family already owned a pair of pythons that the kids played with at home. Plus, earlier that day, the kids had discovered a garter snake and had some fun poking it with sticks. Well, when the rattlesnake came along, the kids had absolutely no fear of it. Just like with the garter snake, they picked up some sticks and started poking it. The rattlesnake wasn't quite as forgiving as the first one, and it lashed out and bit both children on their hands. They then ran to their father, complaining about the bites. Luckily, their father recognized the rattlesnake bites immediately and quickly put the kids in the car and sped to the hospital. Doctors had to administer anti-venom and keep the kids under observation. And although they suffered quite a bit of pain, the kids made full recoveries. Hopefully, they learned that when you see a snake in the wild, you probably shouldn't poke it with sticks. 1. Brutal frog attacks. Scientists have discovered one of the most gruesome snake encounters in the animal kingdom. While studying the mysterious kukri snakes in Thailand, scientists learned that they have an insatiable hunger for frog organs. The way they get to the organs is nothing short of disturbing. Scientists witnessed multiple kukri snakes shoving their heads inside frogs' mouths and then slurping out their organs while the frogs were still alive. This gory behavior has raised some serious questions, as scientists have never before seen snakes feasting on amphibians like this. Most snakes simply swallow their prey whole, leaving the experts stumped as to why these particular snakes choose to dive headfirst inside frog mouths to only eat the organs. Scientists say once the snake gets its head inside a frog, it then swallows the organs one by one during a process that takes several hours. And the whole time, the frog is just sitting there waiting for the nightmare to end, probably praying for death. 9. Carlinhos, Brazil. There are 4 different species of anaconda. Found throughout South America, they're some of the world's largest snakes. These gargantuan reptiles are rumored to sometimes grow as long as 100 feet, but the largest anaconda on record was a female only measuring 28 feet long. Still a very large snake. She weighed an estimated 500 pounds. Anacondas aren't venomous. They constrict their prey to death, and given their size and speed, they could easily kill a human, although attacks are rare. A pair of divers and their tour guide had a close call last year when a 23-foot-long anaconda slid past them at arm's length along the Amazon River in Brazil. One of the tourists, Daniel Alexandre Rodriguez, described the encounter as terrifying in an interview with Brazilian newspaper G1, but he also said he felt lucky to see the magnificent creature up close. Another man, Carlinhos, Brazil, was less enthusiastic about crossing paths with an anaconda, and with good reason. His dog, named Lion, was attacked by the serpent while drinking from a nearby puddle. Harrowing footage shows Brazil wrestling with a 15-foot-long reptile in an attempt to free his canine companion. By the time the snake released the dog from its clutches, he was unconscious. Thankfully, he eventually came around and received a clean bill of health from the veterinarian. It's probably safe to say that Brazil rescued his pup just in the nick of time. 8. Mateus Pereira. Mateus Pereira de Arrojo was just 8 years old in 2007 when he came terrifyingly close to death while playing near a creek outside his grandfather's house in Brazil. He was with his cousin Flavio when an anaconda slithered up to him, took him to the ground, and began coiling itself around his small body. Flavio scrambled for help, racing against the clock to save Mateus, who had started to suffocate. The boy's grandfather, Joaquim Pereira, heard him screaming for help and rushed to the scene. He beat the anaconda with rocks and hacked at it with a machete in a desperate attempt to free his grandson. Pereira spent 30 minutes uncoiling the snake from Mateus's body. The victim received 21 stitches to the chest where the reptile had bitten him, but thankfully he survived. An anaconda can kill a man in just a few minutes. Attacks are rare, but they are known to go after children and small pets more often than adults. The snake that attacked Mateus weighed an estimated 80 pounds. He told the press that the attack happened so fast he didn't have time to react before he was caught in the creature's clutches. Mateus said that he was terrified of dying, and his grandfather described the ordeal as the most terrifying thing he'd ever seen in his life. The little boy's survival was certainly a happy ending, but it came with some serious emotional trauma. 7. Noah and Connor Barthay. One night in 2013, Noah and Connor Barthay spent the night at their friend's apartment in New Brunswick, Canada, as they had many times before. While the 4- and 6-year-old brothers were asleep, a 14-foot-long African rock python escaped from its cage and slithered into an air duct. The vent collapsed under the 100-pound reptile's weight, and the snake landed directly on top of Noah and Connor. Jean-Claude Savoie, the father of the friend the boys were visiting, discovered their bodies and called the police. Sadly, it was too late to save the brothers, who were covered in blood and puncture wounds. An autopsy revealed that they died from asphyxiation. Police charged Savoie with criminal negligence. Prosecutors claimed that the snake had a history of escaping and aggressive behavior, and they accused Savoie of not having the proper license to own the creature. They also blamed him for failing to prevent a needless tragedy. According to court testimony from Constable Stéphanie Dugas, who was at the scene of the tragedy, the python was clearly agitated. After Savoie returned it to its cage, it reportedly made growling noises and lunged at the glass. Experts testified that it was rare for a rock python to act so vicious, and that the species isn't known for going on random killing sprees, leading prosecutors to bring up the possibility of foul play. Savoie's lawyer argued that his client thought the snake was too big to fit into the air duct, so he saw no reason to secure it, even though the snake could access the vent from its cage. Snake expert John Kendrick told CBS News that a startled python will grab onto anything nearby for stability, including people. Savoie was ultimately found innocent of any wrongdoing in the boys' deaths. 6. Nathan Chetcuti. A famous snake handler from Brisbane, Australia, nearly died in 2017 after he was bitten by a pet snake he had recently gotten. 19-year-old Nathan Chetcuti was trying to put his new inland taipan back into its cage when the creature lashed out and bit him. The inland taipan is considered one of the world's most venomous snakes, so the fact that this guy had one in the first place is a little hard to believe. While the species is shy by nature and rarely attacks humans, it will do so if it feels threatened, and its venom is incredibly deadly. Without treatment, a bite from one of these elusive creatures can kill a person in as little as 45 minutes. Knowing his son's life was in danger, Nathan's father immediately called emergency services. News headlines around the world reported on the case as the young man fought for his life in the intensive care unit of a Queensland hospital. Inland taipans typically only bite when provoked or mishandled. Because Nathan is a seasoned handler who's been working with snakes since the age of 5, many people were surprised by the incident. But it proved that wild animals are truly unpredictable and will react according to instinct, even under the most experienced care. It appears as though Nathan eventually recovered and went back to handling snakes, despite his brush with death. Within months of the ordeal, he began uploading new videos to his YouTube channel, which is dedicated to his love for reptiles. And he seems to still be working with snakes based on his most recent posts. His experience is one of just a handful of inland taipan bites on record. All the known victims to date have survived thanks to quick medical treatment, according to the Australian Museum. The species' venom stops blood from clotting and has neurotoxic effects that can lead to paralysis. Urgent first aid and treatment are not only life-saving, but can prevent a lifetime of medical problems. Do you know of anyone that's been bit by a venomous snake? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 5. Yi Heng Chuan. When 29-year-old Yi Heng Chuan went outside his home in Penang, Malaysia to turn off a water pump one night back in 1995, he had no idea that his life was in danger. A sneaky python attacked the rubber plantation worker, whose brother called the police. Sadly, by the time officers arrived, it was too late. The man was dead, and the snake was in the process of trying to swallow him. The hungry reptile already had Chuan's head in its mouth and had crushed some of his bones. Police shot and killed the snake, which at 23 feet long was the longest python ever seen in Malaysia at the time. It was also the first time a python had attacked or tried to swallow a person in the country, according to zoologist Kieu Bong Heng, who spoke with the Associated Press following the tragedy. District Police Chief Mohammed Mokhtar Ahmad told the news agency that the python was 10 inches in diameter and weighed 308 pounds. Sadly, a human is no match for a snake of this size. The moment the creature decided to attack Chuan, he was more or less doomed. 4. Kelvin Katoka. 25-year-old Kelvin Katoka was working as a truck driver in Zambia in 2013 when a python attacked him on the job. He hadn't noticed that there was a snake in his work vehicle before he got behind the wheel at a copper mine. The python lunged at the unsuspecting victim and threw him on the ground. A lengthy struggle ensued as it began coiling itself around Katoka's body. Speaking with press agency AFP from his hospital bed, he explained that he did everything he could to get the snake off him. He kicked and even bit the python before he finally got a knife out of his pocket and stabbed the creature several times with it. We aren't sure why he felt the need to bite the snake before stabbing it, but anyways, the snake began to loosen itself, but it wasn't about to give up without a fight. Soon enough, the reptile tightened its grip on Kotoka and, in his words, started to apply saliva all over his face in preparation to swallow him. At that point, the victim began vomiting blood and fainted. Two of Kotoka's co-workers noticed what was going on. They killed the snake and rushed him to the hospital, where he spent over a month recovering. If it hadn't been for the quick-thinking pair, he may very well have lost his life. Kotoka told the media that he was lucky to be alive, but that he still struggled with pain and weakness and knew his life would never be the same. 3. Jennifer Hay. Jennifer and Randy Hay are avid hikers who've traveled extensively since they got together in 2003. They recently decided to celebrate their 13th wedding anniversary by taking a trip to Shawnee National Forest in southern Illinois. They ended the first day of their vacation with an evening hike. Jennifer, who was wearing sandals, felt a sudden sharp pain on her ankle during the couple's walk back to their vehicle. She told news station Fox 19 Now that she initially assumed she'd been stung by a bee and continued walking, but after taking just a few steps, she knew that something more serious had happened. It was then that she spotted a venomous copperhead snake coiled on the ground, just feet away from her. Randy dialed 911 while he tried to keep his wife as calm as possible, per the operator's instructions. But the pain was excruciating, as Jennifer later described in a media interview, stating that she kind of felt like I got dipped in acid and that everything was on fire. When it comes to administering antivenom, time is of the essence, but the nearest hospital was a 45-minute drive away, so paramedics decided to call a helicopter. Jennifer asked the emergency responders if a medical flight was truly necessary, to which they responded, "Do you like your foot?" She was lucky enough not to need the antivenom and was sent home to recover. Just when it seemed like the Hays could work on putting the ordeal behind them, however, they received a $46,000 bill for the helicopter flight. Their insurance was refusing to pay because they hadn't obtained a prior authorization, which is understandable considering the urgent nature of the circumstances. Thankfully, the issue was traced to a paperwork glitch and the company agreed to cover the air ambulance costs. 2. Peter Dubé. While tending to his mango orchard outside his home in Zimbabwe late last year, a 60-year-old farmer named Peter Dubé was bitten by a black mamba. This highly venomous species grows up to 14 feet long. It has a bad reputation for being extremely aggressive when threatened and is one of the world's fastest snakes, slithering at speeds of up to 12.5 miles per hour. When it comes to black mamba bites, it is imperative for the victim to receive antivenom as quickly as possible. Before the antivenom existed, nearly all bites were fatal, killing most victims within 20 minutes. Unfortunately, the antidote is not always readily available, especially in more rural areas like where Mr. Dubé lived. The hospital he went for his snake bite didn't have the antivenom on hand, so doctors began making arrangements to transport him to another facility 60 miles away. But they didn't act fast enough, and sadly, Dubé passed away while waiting to be taken to the other hospital. He left behind a wife and 3 sons. It's especially sobering to realize that if Dubé had received the antivenom, he would probably be alive and well today. Sadly, black mamba deaths remain common in certain regions due to the scarcity of the antidote. And it's desperately needed in these areas where humans are increasingly encroaching on the species' territory and encounters are becoming more frequent. 1. Attaporn Boonmakchuay. While using the toilet at his home near Bangkok, Thailand in 2016, an unfortunate man named Attaporn Boonmakchuay felt something bite him in the most intimate of areas. It was a 10-foot-long python, which had slithered its way through the plumbing and into the man's bathroom, where it clamped its jaws down on his nether region. Attaporn spent a grueling half-hour trying to get the snake to release its grip. With help from his wife and a neighbor, he was eventually able to pry the creature's mouth open. As soon as the reptile let go, Attaporn fainted. Emergency responders found his bathroom covered in blood. They removed the snake and released it back into the wild. In the meantime, Adam Bourne went to the hospital. Doctors told him that they expected him to fully recover from his injuries. This obviously came as good news to the man, who could be seen smiling in news interviews from his hospital bed. And while Adam Bourne's wife and children were slightly traumatized by the incident, hospital director Dr. Chutima Pacharian commended the patient's positive attitude. All things considered, it's understandable that someone would be extra chipper to learn that their privates were still intact after a python sank its teeth into them.
Number 10. Alligator break-in. In Florida, a woman had her insurance claim denied after a massive alligator broke into her kitchen and wreaked havoc. The brazen alligator attack happened early in the morning on May 31st. The alligator, estimated to be about 11 feet long, smashed through the window of a 77-year-old woman's house. Her name is Mary Wischusen, and the alligator broke right through her condo window and scrambled into her kitchen. It broke bottles, it smashed holes in her walls with its giant tail, and caused general devastation. According to what Mary said, the alligator probably went into her house because it saw its face reflected in the glass of her window and got too excited. After all, it was mating season, and the alligator was probably in a hurry to get busy. Sadly for Mary though, her insurance company isn't interested in paying for the damages. Weeks after the incident occurred, they finally sent Mary a letter, refusing to help pay for anything the alligator may have wrecked. According to them, it's all because the insurance policy doesn't cover alligator break-ins. Should you find yourself moving to the Sunshine State, better check your insurance policies for alligator excluding language. Number 9. Python in the wall. A man in Bangkok was watching TV on a Tuesday afternoon. It was a perfectly ordinary day for 45-year-old homeowner Somchai Samdang. At least it was ordinary until he heard a strange thumping sound coming from inside his walls. He put his ear to the wall and nearly soiled himself when he heard something hiss at him from the other side of the plasterboard. Somchai was not messing around with whatever was living inside his wall. This is Thailand, and there are countless snakes and terrifying creatures that could have been holed up in the poor guy's living room. Rather than waiting to be surprised, he reached out to the experts. He called a special team who showed up to his house with hammers and hacked the wall apart. That was when they discovered that an enormous python had invaded Somchai's house and was living just behind his TV. The snake was an absolute monster. It was so big that if Somchai had ignored the thumping and hissing in his walls, it could have dropped down from the ceiling while he was sleeping and strangled him without even trying. Pythons may not be poisonous, but their powerful muscles make up for the lack of venom. Some of them can grow up to 30 feet long and over 200 pounds. But in this case, the 15-foot serpent was put in a bag and transported back to the wild where it belonged, and where it couldn't strangle anybody in their sleep. Yikes. What would you do if you heard hissing in your walls? Call out the experts or try to find out for yourself what it was? Tell me in the comments. Number 8. A hibernating bear. In Colorado, in the small town of Nederland, a bear was caught trying to hibernate underneath the family's home. Michael and Judith Payne had no idea that a rather large bear had been busy making preparations to live beneath their house through the winter months. They only became aware of the bear's presence when a dog caught sight of the animal and started barking. The barking caused the bear to flee into its hiding place, a den it had made for itself, about 5 feet beneath the couple's house. According to the couple, they were already used to bears wandering through their property. This is rural Colorado after all, and bears are in abundance. What they weren't used to was a bear trying to move into their property. This bear had invaded their home and tried to shack up with them. And while you may be thinking, hey, why can't we all just live together? The truth is that if you went to get in your car early in the morning and walked straight into a 9-foot tall housemate with black fur and huge paws, you might be in some serious trouble. The Payne family called the Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and one of their officials, a professional named Sam Peterson, came and removed the bear from the property. Peterson used ammonia to make the bear go away. Bears can't stand the smell of ammonia. It got so grossed out by the smell that it moved out of its den and never went back to the Payne's property. It was sad for the bear though, since it was now left to prepare for the hibernation from scratch somewhere else. Number 7. Toxic cane toads. In a bizarre story that just came out of Taiwan, it seems the country is being invaded by toxic cane toads. According to conservationists, over 200 of these toxic toads have been captured by researchers. Scientists are now in a race to contain the invasion before the highly toxic toads spread through the entire country and cause widespread damage to the ecosystem. You're probably thinking, what's the big deal? It's just a toad, right? The truth is that cane toads are very dangerous. They're native to America, to only 14 countries between Texas and Peru, but these days they can be found in over 40 countries across the globe. Females can lay up to 30,000 eggs at a time and mate continuously through the whole year. Plus, cane toads don't have any natural enemies. When threatened, they release a milky white substance from their skin called bufotoxin, which is lethal to pretty much every land animal on Earth. Nothing eats the cane toad, because if they do, they'll be dead within the hour. Authorities in Taiwan were able to trace the origin of the toad invasion to a small farm. That was when they found over 200 specimens in the area surrounding the farm and the closest town. Specialist Lin Chunfu from Taiwan's Endemic Species Research Institute says a speedy and huge search operation is critical now to prevent these toads from spreading. But in all honesty, it looks like the train may have already left the station. Number 6. Violent jackals. Scientists have warned British citizens that an invasion of violent jackals could be imminent. Experts are saying that because jackals have been rapidly expanding across Europe in recent years, the beasts could end up in Britain, plaguing the countryside and eating your neighbor's pet poodle. If true, this would be one of the biggest land invasions by an animal in history. And trust me when I say bloodthirsty jackals are the last things you want invading your nation. These howling scavengers are able to travel 9 miles a night and hunt creatures over 5 times their own weight. And while they don't typically attack humans, they definitely could if they wanted. Normally, jackals are aggressive hunters that steal chickens, sheep, goats, and other livestock. But when the livestock isn't available, these cunning dogs can attack animals as big as buffalo. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention that jackals are riddled with diseases. Jackals often contain multiple species of parasites that can prove fatal or at least harmful to humans. While they haven't invaded Britain just yet, they are getting close. Jackals have been spotted in France, Norway, Poland, Austria, and Germany in recent years, spreading across Europe like a snarling disease. Number 5. Burning down the house. Homeowners in Maryland accidentally burned down their house after it was invaded by a bunch of snakes. The family lived in Dickerson, about an hour from Baltimore. The house was impressive before it went up in flames, 10,000 square feet and filled with decades of memories. But all that was lost when the homeowner tried to clear out a snake infestation using smoke. According to Peter Piringer, the spokesperson for the Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service, the snakes have been an ongoing issue for quite some time in the house. They had actually invaded long ago and had no intentions of leaving. The people who had lived in the house before had serious issues with snakes, and the new owners were determined to get rid of them. The homeowners used hot coals in the basement to try and smoke the snakes out of the house and back into the wild. But the hot coals ended up setting the entire house on fire, burning the whole thing to the ground. In the end, the damage amounted to about $1 million. That was a major loss for the homeowners who just purchased the place for $1.8 million. The only good news is that at least the snakes are gone. Would you ever go through such dramatic lengths to get rid of a snake infestation? Let me know your thoughts on this bizarre case in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe before the end of the video. Number 4. Wall lizards. A few decades ago, the residents of a Vancouver island woke up to the news that they had been invaded by lizards. A species of wall lizards from the Mediterranean had shown up in the capital of Victoria. They then began to spread through the neighborhoods. This was a pretty big shock for Vancouver Island residents who had never seen exotic wall lizards before. These people were used to bears, cougars, and raccoons, not spotty lizards that bite your finger. Today, there are an estimated 500,000 to 700,000 Mediterranean lizards living in British Columbia. And they're spreading, going from Vancouver Island all the way into the mainland. And with climate change heating up the Pacific Northwest, these lizards are proving unstoppable. They live for about 10 years. They eat insects, fruits, and local amphibians. And they like to loiter in people's gardens. They aren't dangerous, but they are invasive. What's really interesting is that the lizard problem has been traced back to a single incident in 1957. There was once a roadside zoo in Victoria called Rudy's Pet Park. They had monkeys and lions, as well as wall lizards imported from Italy. But when the park closed in 1970, lizards were turned loose. 50 years later, there's almost 1 million of them running around. Number 3. Boars in Rome. Speaking of Italy, it seems Rome has been suffering from an invasion of their own. They aren't being sacked by the Goths like they were 2,000 years ago, but rather by a bunch of wild animals. Wild boars have crept into the suburbs of Rome, causing car crashes, attacking people's pets, chasing elderly citizens across the street, and feasting on heaps of trash. In fact, the wild boar invasion has gotten so bad in Rome that a video appeared in May showing a gang of boars intimidating a woman near a supermarket. The woman had just left the market with the groceries when she was surrounded by 6 angry boars. They pestered her until she abandoned her groceries to the ornery beasts and ran away. Of course, farmers in the rural regions outside of Rome have been dealing with the menace of the wild boars for years. But now it seems the problem is moving into the city, and nobody quite knows what to do about it. Number 2. Killer raccoons. In Vancouver, raccoons are a part of life. While they may be adorable when looking at them from a distance, these furry masked bandits can be violent and dangerous. There's no better example of this than the woman whose home was invaded by raccoons in the summer of 2021. Not only did the killer raccoons invade this lady's home, they tried to kill her. Her name is Celeste Morgadinho, and she told local news that the raccoon attack has left her with injuries that she may never get over, as well as psychological damage. She's been unable to sleep ever since the incident, an incident in which she thought she was going to die. It happened just before lunch when she returned home from walking her puppy. Celeste discovered a family of raccoons had besieged her front yard. Her dog started barking, and that was when the raccoons attacked. She was able to escape her own yard and close the gate, but one of the raccoons slid through the fence and kept on assaulting her. It only stopped slashing her with its sharp claws when a neighbor came out of their house and started throwing rocks at it. The damage done by the raccoons was severe. Some of the bites are so deep that the wounds may never heal. Plus, Celeste is so scared to go home now that she's been staying at her son's house. Have you ever heard of raccoons ganging up and attacking a person? Crazy. Number 1. Zombie deer. Near the New York border, experts have found something rather terrifying. It seems there's a small invasion of zombie deer creeping towards New York City. Of course, these deer are not actually zombies. They aren't hungry for brains. Instead, they've been affected by chronic wasting disease, also sometimes called zombie deer disease. It's a transmissible disease that can only affect deer, meaning there's no way for it to pass on to a human. But the infection is still pretty terrible, with no known cure except for death. Zombie deer were first discovered in Pennsylvania in October of 2012. Since then, deer with this disease have been discovered in at least 27 counties in Pennsylvania. This means it's clearly spreading, and it seems to be inching into the forested areas of New York. It's not clear exactly what this means in the larger scope of things. However, if the disease spreads, it could mean the end of deer in North America. Not just deer, but also moose and elk. If chronic wasting disease infects enough animals, there will be no recovery possible. Right now, scientists are working desperately to keep the infected deer in Pennsylvania and out of New York. Some experts believe Pennsylvania is a lost cause, and the only way to keep the disease from spreading through the rest of the country is to put up a fence to keep the infected inside.
Would you get in a pool full of spiders if someone offered you $1,000? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.